Can I ask you something? If someone offered you the exact same job your parents had, the same office, the same working hours, the same career path, would you actually want it? Most people under 30 would instantly say no. But why? Just a few decades ago, that same job could buy a house, support a family, pay the bills, and still leave enough money to dream about the future. Today, millions of young professionals wake up early, sit in traffic, answer emails, work 8 or 9 hours a day, and still wonder if they'll ever afford the life they were promised. So maybe the real question isn't why Gen Z hates traditional jobs. Maybe the question is, why are they the first generation willing to admit something everyone else quietly accepted? For years, they've been called lazy, entitled, impatient, and unwilling to work hard. But what if every one of those labels is hiding a much bigger truth? Because this isn't a story about people refusing to work. It's a story about a generation looking at the deal their parents accepted and realizing it no longer makes sense. Somewhere along the way, the promise changed. Work hard, stay loyal, climb the ladder, retire comfortably. That formula built millions of lives in the past. But today, for many young people across the UK and the US, it feels less like a roadmap and more like a myth. And here's the strange part. This shift didn't happen overnight. It happened so slowly that most people never noticed it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Gen Z isn't running away from responsibility. They're walking away from a system they believe stopped rewarding it long ago. And once you see what changed, you'll never look at the modern workplace the same way again. For decades, companies asked employees for one thing above all else: loyalty. Stay late, work weekends, give your best years to the company, and one day the company would take care of you. Sounded like a fair deal, until it wasn't. Imagine spending years building your career, sacrificing birthdays, missing family dinners, answering emails on holidays, only to discover that your position can disappear with a single meeting titled organizational restructuring. No warning, no loyalty in return. Just a handshake, a severance package, and your access card no longer works. Now ask yourself something. If loyalty is no longer guaranteed, why would anyone keep giving it away? This is where many older generations misunderstand Gen Z. They see job hopping as impatience, but many young professionals see it as self-protection. They grew up watching parents survive financial crashes, mass layoffs, rising living costs, and companies replacing decades of dedication with a simple email. That changes how you think. It changes what you trust. The modern workplace didn't lose Gen Z because young people suddenly became lazy. It lost them because trust slowly disappeared. And once trust is gone, everything else starts to feel different. Promotions no longer feel like security. Job titles no longer feel like success. Even a permanent contract can feel temporary. But if trust isn't what people are looking for anymore, then what is? The answer isn't more money. In fact, that's where the story becomes even more surprising. For years, people believed there was a simple formula for success. Work harder, earn more, and eventually life gets easier. It sounds logical, until you compare today's reality with the world your parents entered. In the 1980s and 1990s, a full-time job often meant stability. Wages grew, housing was relatively affordable, and saving for the future felt realistic. Today, many young professionals are doing everything they were told to do, earning degrees, working overtime, taking extra responsibilities, and yet they still feel like they're standing still. Rent keeps climbing. House prices seem to move further away every year. Groceries cost more. Bills arrive faster than pay rises. And suddenly, the reward for working harder doesn't feel like a better life. It feels like simply surviving another month. So let me ask you something. If the finish line keeps moving further away, how long would you keep running? This is what many people call the inflation illusion. On paper, salaries have increased. But in real life, purchasing power has quietly disappeared. A bigger paycheck doesn't always mean a better life when everything around you becomes even more expensive. That's why so many young people aren't chasing promotions the way previous generations did. It's not because ambition has disappeared. It's because the old rewards no longer feel worth the sacrifice. Working 60 hours a week means less when those extra hours still don't buy financial freedom. And once people stop believing that hard work guarantees a better future, something even more valuable begins to disappear: motivation. But here's the twist most people never see. Money isn't the biggest reason Gen Z is leaving traditional jobs anymore. The real reason is something employers can't measure on a spreadsheet, and it's quietly changing the future of work itself. Here's the mistake many companies are still making. They think Gen Z is asking for easier jobs. They're not. They're asking for lives that don't disappear the moment they clock in. Think about it. For previous generations, work was often the center of life. You built your schedule around your job. Today, many young people are trying to do the opposite. They're asking a question that used to sound almost rebellious. What if work is supposed to support my life instead of becoming my life? That's why flexibility has become more valuable than a corner office. Working from home isn't just about avoiding traffic. It's about getting back the 2 hours lost commuting every day. It's about having breakfast with your family instead of sitting in traffic. It's about finishing work and actually having enough energy left to enjoy the evening. To many older managers, these requests sound unrealistic. But to Gen Z, they're simply common sense. They watched millions of people prove during the pandemic that work could happen from almost anywhere. Once you've seen that reality, it's difficult to pretend the old way is the only way. But there's something even deeper happening beneath the surface. Burnout has become so common that many young professionals now recognize its warning signs before their careers have even properly begun. They watched friends answer emails at midnight, miss birthdays, cancel holidays, and slowly lose themselves in jobs that could replace them within weeks. That changed the definition of success. For Gen Z, success isn't just earning more money. It's protecting their time, their relationships, and their mental health before it's too late. And here's the uncomfortable question most businesses still refuse to answer. If a job pays well, but quietly costs you your health, your freedom, and the best years of your life, is it really a good job? That question is reshaping workplaces across the UK and the US. And it's leading to a future that many companies never saw coming. So, where does this leave the future of work? Many people believe Gen Z is simply quitting jobs. But that's not what's really happening. They're quietly rewriting the definition of a career. Instead of asking, how can I stay at one company for the next 30 years? They're asking, what skills will still matter 30 years from now? And in a world where artificial intelligence is already replacing routine tasks, that question might be smarter than most people realize. A job title can disappear overnight. A company can restructure tomorrow. But valuable skills, communication, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, and adaptability can travel with you wherever you go. That's why so many young professionals are building online businesses, freelancing, creating content, learning new technologies, or developing multiple income streams. To older generations, it can look like a lack of commitment. To Gen Z, it's a form of survival. They're no longer putting all their trust in a single employer because they've grown up watching how quickly that security can vanish. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. This isn't really a Gen Z story. It's the beginning of a much bigger shift. Every generation eventually questions the system it inherits. The difference is that Gen Z is doing it publicly, in real time, while technology is transforming work faster than at any point in modern history. They're not rejecting hard work. They're rejecting the belief that hard work alone guarantees a good life. And perhaps that's the uncomfortable truth many people don't want to hear. The workplace didn't suddenly become broken when Gen Z arrived. It had been changing for decades. Gen Z simply became the first generation willing to say it out loud. So the next time someone says, young people just don't want to work anymore, ask a different question. If you were starting your career today with today's housing costs, today's economy, today's technology, and today's uncertainty, would you still choose the same path? Because maybe the real divide isn't between generations. Maybe it's between people who still believe the old promise and those who've realized it quietly expired years ago. And perhaps that's the hidden why behind one of the biggest workplace revolutions of our time.